Joining us from London is writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue. Esther, Merry Christmas and welcome to our last show of the year. Look, you've been a huge part of this show throughout 2023. What are your highlights and lowlights?
Merry Christmas. Well, where to begin? I mean, 2023 started off obviously with the publication of Spare by Harry, which, you know, following the Netflix documentary and the Oprah interview was just another in the series of the Sussexes whinging and complaining and allegations against how poorly they were treated by the royal family. And, you know, going from that to obviously the South Park episode, which was effectively mocking the Sussexes and talking about the worldwide privacy tour, the King's coronation, which was, you know, just went smoothly considering everything that he had to deal with all year, to Princess Catherine and Prince William really making you know, a name for themselves with Princess Catherine's Shaping Us campaign, Prince William's tackling homelessness in Britain. It's really been quite a roller coaster of a year, but it's been enjoyable as well. I mean, it's been an honour to report on the comings and goings of the royal family and even the renegade royals in Montecito.
Absolutely, and we have never been without stuff to talk about, that's for sure. And what do we know so far about the plans on both sides of the pond for 2024?
So we know that with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, they have apparently multi-million dollar deals lined up. They're really going to be pushing for quite a commercially successful year after quite a rocky 2023. We know that Meghan's podcast with Spotify, Archetypes, was cancelled. They have apparently had an interesting relationship with Netflix. We should expect more production from them this year, well, in the year 2024, apparently. So they're looking more to exert their influence in creative spaces, which is quite a shift from, you know, what they were doing in the royal family. I am skeptical as to whether that's really where Prince Harry's heart really lies. I mean, for all the kind of shenanigans that we saw with Ginger Harry in the early 2000s, he was a pretty serious character. This is someone that was in the army and that he spearheaded a lot of successful campaigns with the royal family. To go from that to you know, effectively buying the rights to a book, to making films, and to do things that seem much more up Meghan's lane is a bit strange, but we'll see how they'll get on with it. I mean, we've been hearing that we hope they will stick to something that doesn't have to do with harping on about the royal family. But again, we have to remember that that's been part of their success. You know, the proximity they have to the royal family, it has been what's fueled the novelty and the intrigue around them. And then you have the Prince and Princess of Wales that are continuing with supporting the King in their work. We know that Catherine didn't travel internationally on any royal engagements in 2023. She's going to be continuing on with her Shaping Us campaign, which is a campaign to help families with young children with regards to their children's early development, and also to help businesses support families with young children. So she's going to be keeping that up as well. We know that William only traveled to Poland last year and Singapore. Poland was to go and support the troops on the Polish-Ukrainian border, as well as to speak to some refugees to get a bit more on-the-ground knowledge. And he also is involved with the Outshot campaign, so he'll be traveling again in 2024 to support that. So they do have some plans in the works. It's very likely that the King will travel to have more royal engagements abroad. I believe Canada and Australia should be on that list, but we'll get confirmation next year. So that's going to be on the Prince and Princess of Wales' side. They're just going to be supporting the King and his duties. He is getting on. He is 75. So that's probably going to be more of their focus. And I suspect they're going to get more support from other members of the royal family, especially since, as we said before, there's kind of been a big gap where the Sussexes should have been to support the monarch in that way.
And this week, the BBC, they aired a new documentary, Charles III. Here's a clip.
In a sense, you felt you're part of a family occasion as well as, you know, a royal occasion and a national occasion.
What I get from these rehearsals is just clearly what a great, hugely meaningful moment this is for both of them.
I say a prayer with the crown up there, and then slowly lower it, tipping forward.
Yes, you have to jam it on, so it has to come down to here first.
Esther, the documentary rated very well. What made it so engaging for the viewing public?
I think it was just, an insight into what was going through the king's mind when he was about to become king. Obviously, we know that the passing of the queen was very sad, a deeply sad moment for the country. And so, but this kind of transition into the new era of the monarchy was something that people look forward to. And, this is something that he's been primed for his entire life. So many people wanted to know, what was going on behind the scenes. I think the most telling or the most engaging moment of the documentary, though, was the interview with Princess Anne, who spoke about, the Queen, the late Queen, not wanting to be a bother by passing away in Balmoral. She was actually worried that her funeral arrangements would be troubled or become more cumbersome if she passed in Balmoral, which, again, I do think it was quite a striking moment, because you think even in her dying moments, she's trying to think of how not to be a bother. And these were very candid moments in the documentary that I do think resonated a lot with the country. I mean, obviously, there has been criticisms of the documentary saying that it wasn't challenging enough, or it was kind of like a PR spin on the royal family. And we obviously understand that with sort of Republican movement being at an all-time high this year, I think about 28%, you want to put as much of a realistic spin on what the royal family does. But at the end of the day, the king is the king. The coronation is about pomp and ceremony and all of that. And there's not really much kind of realness you can get into it, because most people will never ever experience that in their lives. But I do think it had very sort of human moments, particularly with Princess Anne. And I do think it was quite a success.
Look, it has been noted that Harry didn't feature in the documentary. Is that really a surprise, though?
It's not a surprise. I mean, he didn't feature in the documentary, I suspect, because he didn't really feature in the coronation at all. He just flew in, had a seat in the back, and then flew out. He didn't really have much engagement in the ceremony at all. His children and his wife opted to stay in California, even though for some reason he insisted on giving his kids the prince and princess title. But we'll leave that there. But there was not really much to talk about. He was not the focus. This was not about him. He's made his feelings of the institution and the royal family very clear. I think if he was included, the bigger question was why did he choose to be there in the first place? But that wasn't the focus. Obviously, this was about King Charles and his coronation and the monarchy being in a new era. And I think it was a good thing that it focused on that.
And something else that's been reported this week is the close relationship between Prince William and Mike Tindall. Ordinarily, you'd think that was an unlikely bromance, but it seems to work, doesn't it?
I do think it seems to work, actually. If you see pictures of Mike Tindall on Christmas Day, he's very much, the laddish, sportsman, and him and William have a certain kind of camaraderie. I mean, Mike calls William one pint Willie because apparently he's not a very good drinker. But again, to be a good drinker against a rugby player of the size of Mike Tindall is quite a feat. So it's not surprising. But, ever since this rift between Harry and William, you can understand why Mike and William may have grown closer. They do have a lot in common. They've both been with their respective wives for over 20 years. They both have children. Young children under the age of 8. And you could see that there is a close bond between the cousins as well. Mike Tindall, he doesn't really follow royal protocol. He's not really about the kind of polished royal life. This is someone who didn't go to university. He started playing rugby for Bath at the age of 18. And he's always been unapologetically himself. And I think that's quite refreshing for someone like William, who knows he has to be prim and proper and follow royal protocol. And I do think that this chasm between William and Harry has, in a way, solidified the relationship between Mike and William. If you think about it, it can be quite isolating being in the royal bubble, and you need that kind of relief. And I think Mike and William's relationship really does attest to that.
And on to Zara. She's also recently said that she considers herself lucky that Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, didn't give her and her brother titles. She appears to have her mother's pragmatism, I guess, and, look, a very good understanding of how royal business works.
Absolutely, and this is one of the most famous royals without actually the princess title, and she's really made good use of it. She's been very influential. She is world champion equestrian. She has won an MBE, and she's always been about her own privacy and living a life that is impactful but not in the spotlight. I mean, this is someone who turned down having a televised wedding. Instead, she had a low-key, at least by royal standards, wedding in Scotland with 400 guests. If only I could be so lucky. I don't think I even know 400 people. But she's always been very practical. And I think that decision that Princess Anne took for her children was actually very important. We now know that, Zara is 21st in line to the throne, so she's never going to, it's highly unlikely that she'll ever ascend the throne. But we also know that Princess Anne's siblings chose to give their kids prince and princess, princess titles and earl and lady. But she specifically chose not to do that because she wanted to give them the choice. And I think that's actually made Zara very grounded. It's the reason why, she has the freedom to live the life that she wants and marry someone like Mike Tyndall, who wouldn't be the first choice for most royal marriages.
Now, we've spoken before about the royal racism row. It doesn't seem to be going away. What's the update and how could those allegations become relevant again?
So apparently Samantha Markle's lawyers are looking to have a deposition with the Sussexes in their ongoing lawsuit, which Samantha says, Meghan libelled her in her interview with Oprah by painting her as not having a sister growing up, and that Samantha changed her last name to Markle when Meghan started dating Harry, which implies that she did that so she can have some relevance or proximity to Meghan Markle. And that's something that Samantha has been in court trying to rectify, because she believes that it had a very negative impact on her reputation, and it made her look like a liar. We know that the Sussexes lawyers have been stonewalling Samantha Markle's legal team's attempt to get some more information, more documentation from them, to actually interview them under oath. But it doesn't look like this case is going to get thrown out of court by a judge like the Sussexes would hope. So we're waiting developments on that as well. I mean, Samantha's lawyers are actually trying to get the whole story from the royal racist allegations to anything that have come out of the Sussexes' mouth, because again, if you're trying to win a libel case, you want to paint the other party as unreliable and not truthful. And we already know that the Sussexes have been quite inconsistent with a lot of their testimonies or recollections of various events. So this could actually come back to bite them. I'm not sure the strength of the case. We do know that America is a completely different ball game. People sue each other over very basic things all the time, but we don't actually know the strength of this case, so we'll have to wait and see. But that's another development in 2024 that could come back quite negatively on the Sussexes.
And lastly, some good advice for the Sussexes. They've been urged to take a year of silence. And while it's probably a good idea to, help them rehabilitate their image, I'm not sure they would cope outside the limelight. Your thoughts?
I mean, I don't think the Sussexes would know what to do with themselves if they weren't in the limelight. I find their transition quite interesting. This is a couple that were happy to leave the royal family as they felt they were suffocating them and giving up the opportunity to spearhead important campaigns. And now they're trying to use their influence to spearhead campaigns, but in a different sphere, in the creative sphere, where they're signing, multi-million-dollar deals. They've got book rights. They're planning on releasing content, because we know in this industry content is king. It's going to be quite an interesting year for them, because on the one hand, we know that if they don't speak about the royal family and the proximity to the royal family, they won't have as much sway, they won't have as much appeal, their star is waning, and the novelty would have worn off. But on the other hand, what can they possibly do? They've now almost become subjects of ridicule. They can't have the same seriousness and cachet to talk about really substantial things. And this is why I think the creative avenue is the only way for them. I mean, I was talking about the fact that they had an opportunity to talk about so many things. Even when Princess Diana divorced King Charles, she was talking about landmines and HIV and all of these really consequential societal issues. And I don't think they have the seriousness or the sway to be able to talk about that in any real way, because now they're going down the kids' route of content and films and books and all of that, and it's just it seems like such a waste because they could have done so much, and I think they've made such a spectacle of themselves that they don't have that ability anymore. So I do think maybe a year out would be a good idea, but again, time is money. If they took a year out, they may not be able to pay for their expensive security. So let's just see what they're going to do.
Esther Krakue, thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for your insights tonight and throughout the year. We look forward to having you back in 2024.